Hello, welcome back, Double Radio Gamescast. Real excitement on the host here set here today. As always, I'm your host Ryan. I'm joined today by my lovely duo of co-hosts, Alex
Drown in the deep or rise from it.
and Brett.
I will ponder whatever he just said for the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Excellent. That's what we like. That's the spot we like to be in at the start. We got a bit of a different episode today because we're missing our lovely Wyatt, and so we thought we'd talk about some game genres, some things that he doesn't typically like to engage with very much. Which means we're gonna go crazy on Final Fantasy 16 for like 5 minutes. That's the plan. 5 minutes. Because I want to do a little. Other shows do this. It's a fun idea. You know, you go through your wish list of a game franchise. And I think with Final Fantasy, that is infinite. Because the games change so much every time, we don't really know what 16 is going to look like when it is unveiled. Outside of the fact that we know it's like a medieval fantasy, and it has action-based combat. That's like the two things that we know. But very little else.
Action-based like the kind that 15 had?
Or
I guess
question.
Stranger in Paradise?
We don't know. One of the combat designers is from the Devil May Cry team, so probably leaning more into like button combo action and not like 15's hold a button down and auto attack for eternity.
It's like button combo action, then I guess strategically switching between the characters you can control in the party.
Yeah, character switching. We know primals and summoning are relatively important in 16, at least story wise. There's like a little tiny gameplay snippet where you can see like bits of fire getting summoned for just a moment that make you go, oh, maybe you can like work some primal stuff into your combos and get like a cool fire set of attacks. Whether or not that still exists, because Final Fantasy games are notorious for showing a teaser trailer with some gameplay. 3 years later, the real trailer comes out and it looks completely different. So
congratulations, you just got iterated on.
Yes.
Got memed on. I mean, we've got Yoshi P producing this one, not directing, like a lot of people thought. So I'm curious to see where this game lies in like the spectrum of Final Fantasy when it comes out.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to look at. Especially because we don't know what to expect. This is a team that hasn't really done mainline Final Fantasy games because it's a lot of the MMO side of things. It's a lot of people from other teams in like Capcom and Square Enix. So, very curious to see what this ends up being.
It's better for 16 that it is that kind of team, I think, because like all the long running teams that are left at Square, they just kind of have like reputations about them that might not be so good for a mainline Final Fantasy game. Like, it's probably a good thing for the 15 team's sake that they didn't like force them to make another mainline game, because I don't think there's a person alive that enjoyed 100% of that game's experience. And, you know, Nomura's got 40 million projects right now, so trying to give him another mainline title would just be... We'd need to wait like another 20 years for it to come out. The Einhander team still exists, but it only does gummy ship segments, so I don't know. Unfortunately. So it makes sense that, you know, MMO teams got a crapload of goodwill. It seems like the safest option. And also, worth pointing out from an interview recently, Yoshi P kind of implied that the game might be either done or very close to being like done/shown.
Wow.
And the only reason that he hasn't shown it yet is because it's paraphrasing here, just out of his power.
It sounds like they're working on the trailer right now. It was kind of the vibe that we're getting from this, and that it's going to be saved for whatever Square Enix's blowout. Presumably in the summer is going to be the big question mark about the release date right now is people are speculating late this year, early next year seems to be the predicted date for this game. The big issue with late this year is Forspoken got delayed into the burrs of the year, which generally under normal company logic would mean you don't release your two biggest franchises next to each other. This is Square Enix.
This is yes, and
The
this is also
company
a
who
thing that
just sold
happened
off.
before.
Go for it, Alex.
Oh, this we're talking about the company who just sold off what $300,000 of
300 million.
300 million. Yeah, bigger, much bigger number.
For NFTs. Yay. For some reason, because they saw what was going on with them. They saw the trends that are very much available online, and they decided to go full steam on
Man,
that.
I'm betting they just
that
saw the
endeavor.
big report, the fiscal report, that NFTs have lost like 90-something% of all their prospective buyers.
I gotta say, I love looking at that red line.
Oh, it's yes, it's very good.
Yeah.
good
The
feeling to
other
see that go
interesting people involved, I think, with this project that we know about, because we don't know the full staff for this yet. We know it's the Creative Business Unit 3, which is the same unit that did 14, but it's a specific like subset. It's not going to be like the same people that are currently working on Final Fantasy 14, but there's a couple people that have been kind of missing from 14's development that are like high profile, haven't been working on other projects that we know about, that
Like,
just
what
kind of
else are they
vanished
doing?
a couple years ago. One of those is one of the key writers of Heaven's Ward, which is like one of the most renowned 14 expansions story wise.
The one that comes with your free trial.
Yes, the one that comes with a free trial. The free trial that you can
The
currently
critically acclaimed
play.
free trial.
Critically acclaimed free trial that is finally back on sale. And one of the writers of that, which was extremely well received, is presumed to be the writer. I say presumed because there's not many other people it could be, at least that Square have worked with in the past, that are not currently working on other projects. So that's the thought there. We know Hiroshi Takai is the director, who was a assistant director on 14 and a director on the Saga game series.
Interesting.
So some interesting people that you wouldn't normally see involved, I think, in mainline Final Fantasy, but are definitely involved with other Square Enix RPG franchises. He was also involved in Last Remnant. So I think it's just a really interesting person to have brought in, because it's kind of I don't want to say directorial debut, because he was an assistant director role before, but it's his first like big, I think, name mainline Square Enix thing to have happened. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see what this looks like with some new blood in the director role.
You touched on the trailer most likely coming out recently, right?
Most likely coming soon.
Yeah. With that, I'm not too familiar with how the Final Fantasy teams handle their advertising. Are the trailers done in house? Is it out? Is it out?
What a
somewhere for specific
great
release?
question, Alex, and what a question that is just unanswerable.
Yeah, it's kind of like, is it right to say it's just literally a different thing every single time?
Yes.
Almost, where it's just
sometimes you get
completely...
the want to kill chaos thing. Sometimes we get like a bunch of ad spots of Final Fantasy 14 characters showing up out of Amazon Alexas and telling people to like do things. So
it depends.
So it's
where they're willing to put the billions of dollars of advertisement money, because whatever it will be bombastic and weird, probably.
But have the advertisements before been... I'm looking for the right words for this. Like, somewhat purposefully misleading, I guess, or have they all pretty much been, right on the money for what the games are gonna feel like, I guess? Because even if it's not a gameplay trailer, then you're still gonna get a feel of the game.
Nope.
That's another thing where you just gave two complete different sides of the spectrum, and the answer is yes, because it's just like it depends on the game. It depends what they want to do with like the story and stuff.
It depends on development issues, because Final Fantasy is notorious for releasing trailers too early. So we often get to the situation of a trailer comes out like 3 years before a game is really ready to be shown off to mass market, and it means we get Final Fantasy Versus 13 turning into 15, and then no one is happy. So
which
I think
doesn't feel like it's happened this time, because it hasn't been that long since they first showed it off.
Yeah.
Right. It hasn't been as long as the extremely exaggerated, sounds like a joke amount of
And
time.
I think a big thing here is we haven't heard of development issues with this game.
Mm-hmm.
In like 15, there were so many rumors swirling around before that game came out. And here, we just kind of haven't heard a lot, which is usually a sign that things are going okay. So yeah, I expect this is at least a more consistent vision of a game.
Yes.
Especially with the people involved with this one. I think Yoshi P is notorious for being the kind of person that came into a studio and like rallied everyone around one idea to get a game out the door and like rebuild 14.
Seems very devoted.
Yeah.
That was going to be one of my... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that was going to be one of my other questions. Do you think the producer I know they're different in East studios compared to Eastern studios compared to Western studios, but do you think the producer does the producer role like it does here, with the exception of the product is a product
does it like
owner
work
title?
like it would here?
Does it provide more oversight or control on the project, or is it more person management?
So it's from what Yoshi P himself has said about his producer role, it aligns more with the kind of Western idea of personnel management and getting a team together and like making sure that the game is achievable in the time frame it's set out to be. Not necessarily being involved in the greater like writing of it or anything. However, in Japan, traditionally, those names have different meanings. Producers can range from being like your typical Western idea of a game studio producer, which is someone that like manages people, to the like traditional Japanese game producer who is just essentially a designer. But from what it looks like here, he's filling the like Western idea of producer and not the Japanese idea of producer, at least as it standed a few years ago. Especially because we have a director on this game. Oftentimes, if the producer was filling that kind of role, we wouldn't hear a lot about a director. Whereas here we have like a named director already as well, which makes me think it's definitely going to be like a shared vision and not Yoshi P's involvement determining what the game is. Because like Yoshi P, he also did not write Final Fantasy XIV. To my knowledge, he's not a writer. He's mostly the upper management kind of developer who's really good at getting people to like make something that is achievable in a time frame. He's a
people mover, yeah.
Yeah, people mover. Is a good way of putting it. So, yeah, I think that's definitely where he'll be on this project. Especially seeing as he's still overseeing 14.
Yeah, which is not a small undertaking, I would imagine, even with like
Herculean,
the larger story and stuff.
Especially because like the 14's budget just got larger and everything going around it being like the...
What's the release schedule for that? Because they came out with the main expansion, then the update. Is there anything else that's going on soon?
Yeah, so 14's release schedule follows a now 3.5 month timeline of every 3.5 months after a major patch, or an expansion launch is a major patch. And like by the time all 5 major patches are released, you will generally have like an expansion's worth of stuff added on top of the expansion. Because your main expansion will have more dungeons and whatnot, but the amount of content between like what is it, the current max level that's going to get added is usually pretty staggering.
And you don't pay for the patches, right? That you just pay for the expansion events.
You just pay for the expansion
or the subscription.
Yeah, your expansion and your subscription, and then that's your stuff that you've got. Which generally works really well. It does lead, because 14 just got 6.1, which added like this huge new raid and a bunch of very high level stuff for players that are super geared into like the end game and high end raiding and whatnot, can have their new ultimate duty to do, which is true insanity. If you go look up at what the Dragon Songs Reprise looks like, I don't know how you do it. You got to be real good at video games and have 8 other people that are really good at video games.
I was really interested aesthetic wise, at least seeing the trailer for the update. It was like, ooh, a very large scale treasure hunt type deal going on here.
Oh yeah, no, the new idea of because the raid now is like we did the world saving. That's done with. That was the expansion. Now we're going into whatever new stories are going to be told. So They're leaning more into the like treasure hunter and adventurer mindset rather than the story that relies on like saving the world.
Beginning like I guess more small scale, opening up more new story threads since a chapter has been closed.
Yeah,
essentially.
I wouldn't necessarily say small scale, but not universal scale.
Yeah, not saving the world scale.
We're
More like
refocusing
like,
on
I want
the
that
world
treasure.
that 16.
I'm going to get it.
Yeah, we're refocusing on the world that 14 is set in, and not solving a bunch of problems that are super large and like closing out all these storylines that have been going for years because we've closed them. They're done with.
Do you still
as well as getting our goofy stories.
Do you still think there'll be story threads where you have to deal with, I guess, the whatever fallout there is from you saving the world? Because I don't know if you unite everyone in one common
Yeah, I
purpose
mean, I'm not
in
gonna spoil anything, but the way I'd put it is Endwalker, as it launched, has an ending. Unlike, because a lot of Final Fantasy XIV expansions, the patches will be dealing with the aftermath of whatever happened, and then leading into the newest expansion. With Endwalker, they took kind of a different tack where Endwalker ends. Endwalker is not an expansion that kept going for 2 years. It's an expansion that is over because they really wanted to close out all their story threads that they were following in that singular expansion release. So the patches are now kind of building out the new threads for whatever's going to come next. And focusing on like getting some cool side activities. Like we're going to have a neat little island in a couple months that you can do something on. I don't know what yet, but you can do it. It got its like weird little battle pass system now. Yeah, there's battle passes in 14, except you don't pay for them; they're just in the game, which is nice. So,
how it should be.
So if you do PvP, you got your battle pass. If you don't have to ever concern yourself with it, which is nice to see. All right, moving off of Final Fantasy talk, unless there's other things people want to bring up with it. Nope.
I think I have a
like
just
Chrono
like a
Trigger.
speculative, a speculative. I don't feel worried.
Yeah,
is the feeling that I have towards 16, where I wasn't really a fan during the 400-year development period of Final Fantasy 15, but at least having gone back and done like a lot of personal research on stuff that went wrong during that, it makes me feel a lot better, and it seems like 16's still in good hands, even with like, oh, we haven't seen a trailer in a while and stuff. Like, it's if they're just working on it and it's ready, then that's just more time to polish it.
Yeah,
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, and I definitely think looking back at the state of Final Fantasy, not including 14, because 14 and 11 are MMOs and very separate from the mainline. Mainline Final Fantasy has been in a state for many, many years. The last, what I would say pretty universally, not necessarily critically acclaimed, but well-received entry was 12. So that's already back to the PS2. We're going back 3 generations. So I think they're going to be in an interesting state. But I also think following up on 15, I think people will be happy with relatively little here, as long as the story is good and has a through line that is followable and actually delivers.
And you don't have to watch 3 different movies to understand the
entirety
of what happens.
If you watch the movies and the anime and read the books and play the prequel games and play the fishing mini game for 15, the story's pretty interesting. I just don't want to do it. And I did. I did it all. I did everything. I watched all the movie. I watched all the anime. I read the book. I played the prequel game. You know what? I'm over it. I beat that game. It's just the kind of thing. I think that game takes itself too seriously. It's one of those Final Fantasies that just kind of never lets your protagonist even have a little bit of a good time. And it's just kind of sad. Plus the fact that the coolest party members don't actually join your party because they were like, oh, you don't get any party members aside from the bros. I like the bros, but let me get some other people in here.
Yeah, then there's Dragoon Lady.
You get awesome Dragoon Lady, Aranea, who is cooler than every other member of the cast. Nothing done with her. You have someone's sister, I think Prompto's sister, is a companion for a little while. It's just why can't I just keep them? They have entire movesets. They have everything except a skill tree.
I'm
Just let me use them.
I'm just there for the high poly food models.
They are very high poly food.
The food does look very good in that game.
Look at that sauce. Those liquid physics.
Yeah,
What a yummy
I'm
simulation.
very hopeful for 16, but I'm hopeful in the way that my expectations are very low for this game.
I want it to be a fun game.
Which I think means it's going to meet it. Like, my expectations are at Tales of Arise levels. So if we get something on the level of Tales of Arise, I think I'm going to be happy. That's a good spot to be in for 16, I think. We've been told, to confirm, we've been told the trailer is coming soon, specifically. Mm-hmm. Not that it's, like, not happening. We just don't know when. And soon could definitely mean 3 months from now. It could mean tomorrow. So we'll find out when it happens.
One can hope. Right.
So the best performing episode of our podcast is still, surprisingly, the Ace Combat and Project Wingman episode, but
let's go,
near
baby.
second now is the Elden Ring Gamescast. And
oh man,
boy howdy, Elden Ring has snuck its way back into the news because Elden Ring got a lot of updates. Dark Souls games on the PC are still not playable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Multiplayer at least.
Multiplayer, yeah, they're playable. They're just not playable in multiplayer, which is a shame because they really shine with multiplayer, especially Dark Souls 3, and not having it is very sad. So hopefully that gets resolved at some point. But the prevailing opinion on this is it seems like FromSoft might be trying to implement easy anti-cheat into their games retroactively, which has to be a nightmare.
It's gotta be, yeah. Because also, I mean,
re-implement. Did
not re-implement.
Well, because they
take it away.
They had their own. They had their own like. Oh, if you are cheating, report them to us, and we will get rid of them, and they will get put on the cheaters server. But when the widespread cheat comes out that lets you remotely pilot people's computers and steal from them,
serious than
then that's the old-fashioned way is not going to cut it anymore. But it used to be that every time that easy anti-cheat came up on the screen, I would meme about it with my friends, and I'd be like, "Oh, haha! It's just a matter of time before something in Pat labors like this, where everything uses it. So the second that one person knows how to crack it, they've got all these games that run easy anti-cheat that they're going to be
USB-C.
able to." And now it's like easy anti-cheat really isn't that much of a stopping force all that much. A lot of games that use it still have not like widespread hacking problems, but there's still like
they exist.
There's people, they exist. Halo Infinite and MCC.
BattleEye has a fair amount of cataracts, if you ask me.
Well, I mean it's just old.
Yeah, BattleEye is an older system. And I think that the main benefit of easy anti-cheat and other anti-cheat systems that are like this is that they prevent the like kernel level issues that the games were having, where you're not going to have an issue where someone can remotely control someone else's computer from Dark Souls. Like that is not, you're not going to get that issue, which I think is what they want to avoid. Especially because like Dark Souls cheating is generally people like memeing themselves into a boss that you have to fight and like doing cool phased encounters and whatnot. Like cheating in Dark Souls games is generally well intentioned outside of like the one person who tries to corrupt your save.
Do they consider that, God, because I saw like was either 4.5 or like 7-minute 55-second speed run where the strat was like they're trying to do like this frame perfect thing off a ledge with
for Elden Ring.
Do they consider that cheating, or is that an exploit?
It's not cheating, but it's something you would patch out.
Yeah, cheating is like I modded in invincibility. Or I changed the code of the game to give me weapons and gear I shouldn't have yet. Yeah. Which most of the time is like, oh, I'm a Dark Souls streamer and I downloaded the item randomizer mod, so all the items in the entire world are randomized, and I forgot to put myself online, so someone invaded me and I have much better stuff than whoops. Okay, I guess I
did a little bit of off-camera grinding.
Yeah. Cheat. If it's just like I think they're called zips or whatever. What you were talking about with Elden Ring, that's just an exploit.
Yeah, that's the one
that they might get rid of. I don't know.
That's generally the primary difference between like cheating and an exploit is exploits are achievable within the game engine and are not using outside software. Outside of like people in speedruns will often use like tool assisted things to be able to achieve an exploit that isn't like physically doable. But there's a whole other speedrunning conversation we can have.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around tool assisted things, like with getting things frame perfect. My God.
It just allows you to like cut to specific frames and like put the inputs in that you want to achieve and whatnot. And oftentimes in certain games, it doesn't even mean that. It'll just mean you can basically have save states and then retry, and your time will go from when the save state was rather than continuing the entire time.
Which obviously is different from the one-shot thing. They're like different categories, but very funny to watch either way. Yeah.
All right. So after that, we have a few interesting things that happened this week. We'll talk about Halo Infinite Season 2 more when Wyatt is on the podcast, because that's kind of his baby right now. But Halo Infinite Season 2 is launched. Woo.
How about that? Next.
Yeah, I don't want to hang on it for very long, but I do just want to say that like I'm glad this game is getting support. I'm very concerned that it is 2 maps and a couple game modes being added, and not they're not really addressing the core issues of pipelines and how things are working. The challenge system is still exactly the same. There's also the issue of I went to play the game, realized, because when you get a season pass in Halo Infinite or Battle Pass, you have it unlocked forever, and you can continue to progress it past the time that the season has ended, essentially. So I got the first one when they first came out. This is like $10. It's an easy pickup if you're interested in playing that game. Except now, one of the big selling points of getting that pass is you'll be able to do 4 challenges at once instead of only 3, which is still a bad system. It's a band-aid fix to a system that is broken in conception. But now that a new season has started, if you bought the prior pass and are still working on that pass, you have lost the ability to use the 4th challenge slot. So,
you have been punished by the developers for not buying the new pass.
That sounds like a game that the developers want me to play. Wow.
Yeah, it's a rough situation, and I'm hoping 343 can get a handle on this. We'll see for Season 3, I think, because at this point, Season 2, we still don't have Forge.
Coming in a year and a half.
I think campaign co-op maybe exist. I'm not 100% positive about that.
It exists in the minds of dreamers.
I am going to check that right now, because I don't want to have said that and then be wrong about it existing.
Do they have like a timer for how long the season's going to be?
So they said about 3 months, 3 to 3.5, which I think is a much better time frame.
Yes, a normal season length instead of twice that.
They did say that when they first came out with it, that the season was going to be 6 months, right? And then
the first season was a gigantic mess. And we knew going in the first season was longer than it was supposed to be.
That's the length of a season in Destiny when something has gone horribly wrong.
Yeah. I still can't say that there is campaign co-op. Nope.
Let's
not
just
here.
Be on the safe side that there isn't, because why get your hopes up?
Yeah, no, I looked it up. There is nothing saying there is. We know Split Screen was moved to Season 3 now.
Oh, come on.
And not this, so it keeps getting further away. And wait, so Season 3 is supposedly also supposed to begin on November 8th, which is not 3.5 months. So
no. Oh, no.
All right. This roadmap could be outdated. It could be outdated. It does say Season 2 goes from May 3rd to November 7th, and November 8th is Season 3, which is, again, almost as bad. Not particularly good there, because that's another just about 6-month season.
Yep. Can't wait for Wyatt to finish the entire pass in 2 weeks again.
Yeah. All right. Well, after the disappointing reminder of Halo Infinite's current situation, which Wyatt will get his say as soon as he's back. But as of right now, indifferent. All right. Neat little thing. Dying Light. Y'all remember Dying Light?
1?
No, not 2.
1.
Dying Light 1 just gave everyone who has purchased the original game a free upgrade to the enhanced remaster version.
Oh,
nice.
It's a neat little thing to just do.
Consumer friendly in 2022? No way.
Surely
this game
not.
is still getting
Impossible.
free DLC after the launch of its sequel. I think that's astounding.
They've been updating and supporting that game for a very long time. I'm happy for those developers.
I'm just super interested
and
in
their
this.
fans.
All right, so E3 was canceled, as we all know. We have a few studios picking up some slack now.
Yes.
Microsoft and Bethesda have announced that they're going to have a big showcase event, I believe Thursday, June 12th.
Yes.
Is the date for that. It's going to be, I think, around 2 p.m. Eastern time.
And the poster for this event was the Xbox logo on a field of stars.
Or space.
A star field, one might say.
Or space.
Or
Where
space.
many games take place.
I think the clear intent with it is there's going to be Starfield information at this. I think that is the marketing idea of this, and hopefully there is Starfield information, because if not,
I would hope to God.
I'll be real sad. All right, so that's the first event we have. The second one, Summer Game Fest, is having a official showcase again this year at 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, June 9th. Okay, so it can't be June 12th is not a Thursday then.
Yes.
But I believe that is the date for the Xbox show.
Yeah, 12th is
showcase.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think we definitely have some studios picking up the slack from what we were expecting to see. It's a Sunday for the Xbox showcase.
Okay. Worth pointing out for the Summer Games Fest thing too. You can go to an IMAX theater and watch it on the big screen.
Yeah.
Which sounds fun on paper, but I don't know if I would like
who's
to
gonna be there.
Yeah, who's gonna be there? What's that theater gonna smell like for 3 hours?
It's gonna smell like gamer.
Ooh. Yeah. I mean, it's not like a Smash event or anything, so it won't be that bad, but I don't know. It's not like there's a thing too where it's not like an official this is you come to E3, it is run by the E3 people. There's the E3 schedule. You're at E3. You're not at theater number 500 in Brooklyn to go watch the E3 thing, where the people running it are just theater employees that just got hired 2 weeks ago and
they're probably not prepared for what's about to happen.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I almost want to go just to see what happens, but that's probably not a good idea.
Probably not going to be as fun as it sounds.
No.
Yeah.
Watching with friends is probably going to be a lot better.
I'll definitely say the Summer Game Fest we had last year was not amazing. There was a lot of just middling performances going on, and just a lot of time was spent not on video games, which isn't necessarily a huge issue in and of itself, but it also didn't really have the weight that I think Jeff Keighley wanted it to have. So I'm hoping this year, with the lack of an E3 around, we maybe get more high-profile stuff in this, and a bit more of a showcase on games, because when you're showing off a bunch of indie games in a game show like this, you really need to nail home, I think, the way that you present them, and the musical number for Wave Riders, where it was not, I think, the way to go.
Thanks,
Weezer. I don't know why they call them ads when they subtract from the experience.
Oh.
Wow. I really... It's taken me a while to comprehend that was just said. All right.
There's my pun for the episode.
There's your pun for the episode. Wonderful to hear it.
Past my quota.
All right. Overwatch 2 got a bunch of preview tests and footage from streamers and whatnot. Prevailing opinion,
was the open beta
more
for
Overwatch. It's not an open beta. It's a closed beta.
That sounds about right, because I've heard from people that I know who like Overwatch and still do that it's fun, and I've heard from people that either did not like Overwatch in the first place or stopped liking Overwatch that it's not fun, and that leads me to believe that it's It's just more Overwatch. Which still begs the question: why is the number 2 next to it, and why did it take so long?
Is it in a new engine? Were they doing that type of thing?
No, they literally showed one of the maps in Overwatch 1 versus Overwatch 2, and the way in which it like did the sweep of old to new was very clearly like, okay, this is the same camera and theater system in the same engine on the same geometry, because you can't get it that clean otherwise. Like, and other remaster things, like, oh, that tree is like a little bit off, or like that rooftop is a little bit higher or lower because now they could fit the corrugated steel triangle thing in there. It's just the same map. It just has different lighting on it.
Then the reason is money. That's why they put the number.
But maybe
we'll see though, because the PvP is free. So I don't know if it's money. Yeah, Overwatch 2 just confuses me.
The PvP is free. Microtransactions, loot boxes.
Yeah, we'll see when Overwatch 2 comes out. I don't want to judge it before it's out, but I do think it is definitely in a weird spot right now. I do want to address quickly, so a whole bunch of information came about Square Enix selling studios. We already talked about that. That video is already out. It's already out in podcast form too. So it just doesn't have the podcast number because it was a thing. The podcast that week was very different, so we wanted to make sure we talked about it in a way that it was condensed and easy to get to. So that is its own thing. If you're looking for our takes on that,
that's your OVA episode.
Your OVA episode. I do have one last little bit of news that I wanted to talk about, which is the fact that Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, the remake, is being remade by a different studio.
This seems like when people don't get the point of an anti-war film.
Explain.
You're gonna have to explain this one.
Explain.
Not in the exact same literal sense of Prince of Persia as an anti-war game, because it's absolutely not. It's an action romp that I can't say is fun enough because I haven't played it. I've just seen it, and it's a game. I mean, in the sense that why are you remaking it again? It doesn't.
They're remaking it because Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is incredible. It's a really, really good game. It just kind of looks a bit shit, to be honest.
Then I was thinking of the wrong Prince of Persia game.
You might be thinking of the one that came out, I think, in 2009, and is like a cel-shaded action game.
Yeah, that's
Sands of Time is the like classic, very almost Uncharted-y mixed with Devil May Cry is kind of the idea. Very good games. They're just at this point have aged a lot and are a bit janky, and the controls that worked very well then don't feel so good anymore. Yeah, that's why it's being remade. The studios that had been making on it was Ubisoft Pune, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and Mumbai. Now it is being done by Ubisoft Montreal, which is the studio that also originally made the Prince of Persia games. So
okay, what I was thinking was happening was further bastardization of.
No, so this is a game that it definitely does like deserve a remake, but it's the remake that we saw at E3 a few years ago that looked really bad. Like, the art style was not good. It did not look different from the first game, to be honest, which is like a weird state to have been in. The voice acting was not great. That was like a thing that really stood out, is the voice acting was not good for a game that had pretty good voice acting originally. So, yeah, I'm hoping this is good. This is a Metroid Prime 4 situation. We're not going to see this game for 3 more years, I think, minimum.
Yeah.
Because you don't release a Ubisoft Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake without it being a S-tier game. So
fingers crossed it's not going to be out of date by the time it comes out again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that is the worry. I have a lot more faith in Ubisoft Montreal, though. I think they generally, the stuff that Montreal makes, I think comes out pretty well. Yeah, I just have a little bit more faith in them. For a example of what Ubisoft Montreal has done, they were the original Assassin's Creed developer. They've worked on basically every Assassin's Creed game as a support studio, so they've done quite a number of things. They're also the people behind Hyperscape. So maybe they opened up a little bit. after that, which I think might be what happened. So yeah, I hope this goes well, but it is sad to hear that there's been this many issues with the development. All right. Yeah. Now it's time to talk about our topic for today, which is basically things that we wouldn't normally talk about. We usually don't spend a lot of time on older games. We don't spend a lot of time talking about gameplay and specific like systems that we like in games that are not traditional. So I wanted to bring up some stuff that is not what we normally do, and talk a little bit about a few games we've been playing both recently and a long time ago that I think are doing things very interestingly and are good to pay some attention to. Start out by talking about Blue Reflection.
Yes.
So
and this is the part where I go silent and fade into the background.
Blue Reflection
and observe.
Is a Gust game. And Gust is the studio behind all the Atelier games. They make all the nice little cozy alchemy JRPGs that are very friendly and just good times. Blue Reflection is their take on what if a magical girl show was a JRPG. I haven't played the first Blue Reflection, except for I've heard it's not that great.
Yeah, I've heard it's not very good.
The second Blue Reflection, called Second Light, came out relatively recently and was just on sale. Went and picked it up, and it's really good. Like, really good. But it's also a really weird take on JRPGs, because there's like, there's no overworld. You don't like explore areas with like towns and things. There's like a school that you exist in for the entire game, from what I can tell. The only NPCs in the game are your party members and like two other characters that are like not party members, but tertiarily you always have contact with them, and they're like your crafter and whatnot. So there are no NPCs in the game aside from people that you basically can play as or are constantly in contact with, which gives it a really interesting feeling, because it's working with so little in terms of how you can like build stories off of it and whatnot, and like where characters are going to pop up and how they're going to be involved, because you're working out of this system of like, okay, it's a bunch of amnesiac students trying to find their memories, but they're all in a school and they're magical girls. That's the setup here, which sounds more chaotic than it becomes, I think, but it's just such an interesting like take on it, because it doesn't have the support structures that a lot of JRPGs have, of a town to explore, a lot of people to talk to, NPCs to have conversations with. It's basically all just talk to your party members, figure out what to do, and go do it, which is a really interesting structure. It kind of follows like the Persona style of having dungeons that are based off of the emotions of characters. So all of your like dungeons that you're exploring are essentially based off of one of your party members, and going into them and like basically uncovering the memories that have been lost, which is a really interesting thing, because you'll find like an area that, I'll use an example of a character that used to be a ballerina. So you go into the first part of her zone, and it's like this big, there's paintings everywhere of classical like ballerina poses and dancing. There's like mannequins doing dances. Then you go through the next door after you find out that she broke her leg and can't dance ever again, and it's literally like a Dark Souls castle.
Oh my god.
Where she's all sad, and then you.
Oh, well. Now I'm thinking of the god. What's his name? The dancer boss in 3.
Yeah, it's just super interesting to play a game like this that I think is a little bit more direct than Persona is with its metaphors. It's not trying to be as like subtle, but there's also like moments in it that I think were really surprising, where like the second party member you get was in her dungeon, and in that you can just see as part of the landscape is this like train track that's running through the entire thing, and at no point during the actual main story do they talk about this train track. But if you go off the beaten path and like explore and go climb up a little ladder over to like an overlook where the train track cuts off, you can like have a conversation there with your party, which will go like, well, maybe this is like representing that I felt very railroaded in how my life was going up until this point. And then this like, you can see the train track is cutting off before a building, and she talks about how that building kind of like opened her mindset up a little bit. And it's just an interesting way of the environment telling a story that I think is a little bit more character focused than most other JRPGs. And just the sheer amount of character interactions is kind of stunning. It's very character focused.
that mindscape stuff, and I've been I don't want to say saturated. I've seen that a lot more in games recently, like with this season of
Yeah.
Destiny, which obviously doesn't go that in depth with it. Psychonauts 2, more mindscape thing.
Psychonauts was definitely, I think, the first major like Western popular thing that did it. At least in
but
games.
I think that mindscape aspect really sort of fits well into a magical girl setting.
It definitely works way better than I thought it would, and it really makes up for the lack of characters. And I say lack of characters, but I already have like 6 party members, and the game just told me I probably don't have nearly all of them. So, yeah, there's a lot more, which is really interesting because the first Blue Reflection I know only had your like main 3. You didn't get any other party members of that entire game. So, going into this has been very interesting, and especially because from what I can tell, I've met the characters from the first Blue Reflection. They don't even show up until a couple hours in. They're not particularly important in a way that like calls back to the first game, and I don't feel like I've lost anything from not having played that. So I definitely think it's a good jumping in point, especially because your protagonists are different. They're not the same. So yeah, it's definitely a good jumping in point on its own. And then there's the combat. So the combat in this game is ATB system. Your time is always flowing. You have like little images in the bottom right of your characters and the enemies on a timeline, moving forward constantly that are going to like attack at this point. And it builds on the system of like every time you use a skill, you will progressively get more and more mana essentially every turn to use more skills. And by turn, I just mean like in a 10-second period, essentially. So what happens is as battles go on, they get progressively faster and faster. To the point where like you unlock gear stages of your characters, which is like how the magical girl transformations play in. Of you start at first gear. Once you use a skill, you'll probably go up to second gear. Once you use like 5 more, you'll go into third gear. Third gear, you transform. You get a lot stronger, and every gear has like its own abilities that you have. So if you're in second gear, you have additional abilities compared to if you're in first gear. So I have like a healer, but I can't heal unless I get her up to that second gear first. So if I get like nuked at the start, I have to use a bunch of items to fix it essentially, which is a really interesting way of working. Actually. Yeah, it's really cool.
Sounds like a cool feedback loop.
It is a really cool feedback loop, and you have a support character, which is also really cool, where it's a party member that you put into this like secondary row, and then every like 20 to 30 seconds, they have 2 abilities you can select that are things that have like a percentage chance of activating, like every 30 to 60 seconds. That combat is going for in real time, and they're like super powerful passive abilities, where one will like double the length of any status effects that I apply if it triggers. So you can like apply something, watch that timeline until that character's about to do that, apply something, and then you'll get like this huge boost in power. Or you can have someone that will like heal passively in the back line. There's really interesting handling of that. Plus, they can use items without taking up a turn or taking up the time that it would take for a normal party member to use them. So you've got a really interesting play with that. But of course, they can't use an item on command. They have to wait for a little like wheel to fill up, so you don't get to use something instantly. You have to like wait for them to be able to use it. So the combat system has been like super interesting, very fast paced, and it hasn't gotten boring, which I think is very impressive. I will point to, though, it does have the PS2 JRPG thing of having very bad stealth sections.
Oh, no.
They're not very frequent, but when they come up, I'm like, oh, one of these again. I see.
With the cooldown wheel, I think that you were talking about, does that sort of, I don't want to say railroad you into a certain way of playing, but does it sort of act as a guide as to how you can best stack abilities?
The wheel itself doesn't, but the abilities that your support characters have access to do. So like I have a party member that can specialize in like debuffing and using status effects on enemies. If I put her in my backline, she essentially will allow everyone else to inflict debuffs a lot easier. So they're thematically related to like what the characters do as actual party members. So you get a really interesting setup of like, do I want this person in the back line, the front line? You have support like equipment you can equip, and some of them will give you bonuses in combat. Some of them will give you additional abilities. Some of them give you like entirely different like kits that you have access to and things you can do. You've got like a talent system that's entirely based around basically support levels from Persona, of you like talking to your social link characters, and then they gain skill points from that. You don't get skill points from combat here. You only get skill points from hanging out with the other characters, just like having conversations with them. And then your main character only gets skill points from other people getting skill points.
Huh.
So you have like this loop of you return back to your base after fights and then like talk to everyone. You have this base building in this game. It's like,
of course.
You decorate the school.
That's a neat aspect for, very community growth focused aspect of the Magical Girl.
And it plays into it a lot.
Franchise.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas that they play with it that are very interesting, and they become like, once you build something, you generally get like a passive bonus where I build this thing, I now have permanent like attack boost as long as I have it built, but I can also go there with the other characters and then like talk to them and get them leveled up. So all these things serve multiple functions, and it kind of builds back into itself very well. I think it's like from the Gust development team, I think this is definitely the weirdest game I've seen them make, because it doesn't translate well to anything else. Like the crafting system is there, but it's not like nearly as complex as Atelier. But it has like more character focus. So you can like, you choose 4 characters to craft an item, but the number of characters you choose and like who is in it will give you special bonuses. Like if you get all the characters from the start of the game, they'll give you bonuses to like healing items and whatnot. So you have to like play around with who is actually doing things, and you get like progressively more and more combinations that you can do as you get more party members. So it definitely kind of expands outward in its complexity. I think it's just been really surprising to play because it feels a lot bigger budget than it actually is.
It looked like it too. It looks like a really pretty game from what I've seen.
It's got a very pretty art style. It's not the most like technically pretty, but
it has a lot of polish to it.
Yeah, the art style is fantastic. The animations are pretty universally really good. The soundtrack is like one of the best that I've heard recently. It plays a lot with piano and violin, which is a type of soundtrack that video games just don't often use. It's very classical, and you'll get those like long stringing violin notes that just kind of hype up a fight. And I think it just works really well in this setting. So it's been super interesting, and I'm hoping we get more weird oddball games like this, because it is the type of thing that I know this game cannot have sold that well. I do not imagine, probably in Japan it did really well, but I imagine in the West, like a Magical Girl JRPG, that does not have a big audience. But it's really surprisingly well built. It's definitely got like the budget to rival proper Atelier games, which is impressive. So yeah, I definitely think it's worth checking out at some point, just because I haven't played anything quite like it. And the combat system is startlingly good. So.
Yeah, it definitely seems like something I would be into and have to grab at some point.
Yeah,
I know it doesn't go on sale very often, but I need to wait until it does next time, probably.
Yeah, Koei Tecmo acquired Gust recently, which means sales have stopped for the most part. They happen like once a year. So, rest in peace. Yeah, it's a neat game though, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. All right, who else has got something they want to talk about?
I am pretty sure I mentioned this as a shout out, but just because I'm still in the middle of a bunch of games to the point where I haven't really formulated all my thoughts on, I want to give some real meaningful time to Lost Odyssey, which is it's half very weird and half very comfortable game. In a lot of ways, because it's made by Mistwalker, so you got your Hironobu Sakaguchis and your Nobuo Uematsus and whatever other classic Final Fantasy staff they slipped away with during the Great Purge. In a lot of ways, it really feels like the true Final Fantasy 12 or 13, whatever would have come out at around that same time. I think we're talking like 2007, 2008. start of whether some people like it, some people don't. After the Squaresoft and Enix merger, one of the biggest, butterfly effect things that everyone else could feel from that is that the Final Fantasy games, boy, did they start changing. They became very different. Final Fantasy IX really does feel like the end of an era compared to what I've played and seen from things like 10, 12, and 13. Um, and again, for better or for worse, some people like that, some people don't. Um, Lost Odyssey really does feel like if it was the same team at Squaresoft, this would have been the sequel to Final Fantasy IX because it while the PS1 games didn't have like the radically different this one's going to be action, this one's going to be an MMO, this one's going to have this turn-based system, this one's going to have this weird crazy upgrade tree. Like they still had their differences. Like 7 had the little upgrade perk things, and 8 has the magic drawing things, and 9 has the gear upgrading through learning things. Lost Odyssey also has the gear upgrading through learning things, except you can customize what your characters learn and keep learned. And by the end of the game, because they give you an optional item that basically just gives you like 20 upgrade slots after only having like 8, and it's 20 on top of those 8. So you just have like a gigantic restaurant menu of like you can be immune to every single element, every single status thing. So like things can only hit you for like physical damage. It's basically you can absolutely obliterate the last few bosses of this game if you do all the extra content, which is awesome. And that's like that kind of customizability is like if you even played a little bit of Final Fantasy IX, it just feels like the sequel to Final Fantasy IX because you could do like primitive versions of that the same way with the characters in 9 with how they'll learn a skill off of a set of gear and then they just have that skill forever, except they can only learn like certain things, and once you filled up the list you filled it up, and if you didn't gain all the points that you could across the whole game, then oh well. But also I mean, from all that I've played of both Nobuo's composing and Sakaguchi's like writing and directing, I think this might be both of their best work. I really like the Final Fantasy VII Remake soundtrack a lot, but Uematsu did like by himself like 3 or 4 songs, and then he's just credited as all the other ones because he wrote them originally, and they're all like other composers like doing different interpretations of them. And the songs that Nobuo did for both the original 7 and remake are amazing. Just thinking of like a 70-year-old man just shredding on a guitar and making breakbeat for the Midgar Expressway section is hilarious and very endearing, and I love it. But there's just something like I don't know if I'll be able to explain this in the best possible way, or it will be able to convey the feelings that me and the other people that I was streaming to felt. Um, I was like 50 hours into the game, and I was on the world map screen. You got your world map music. It's not like fully explorable. You can like fast travel between different areas unless you're on a boat. So I was on the fast travel screen, and I was like, okay, I'm trying to get some of these extra things because I want to start being God. I want to start being immune to items and status effects and stuff. I want to make sure I get at least most of them just to see how like fun that is. So I'm scrolling through game facts, and you have your little like guitar jingle of like, oh man, this song's really good. It's super chill. It's just like, wow, what a good world map theme song. And all of a sudden, and I had never heard this until 50 hours into the game because I had not sat at the world map screen. It changes from like beautiful acoustic guitar, someone just starts shredding. Like someone's just going like crazy, just like the electric guitar comes in with like huge like rock drums and stuff, and it's the same melody of like super peaceful, like you've walked through this world for an eternity type feeling, but now with like it feels like the Black Mages, Nobuo's like crazy prog rock band, just like bust down the front door and is now just everyone is soloing all at once. And if you don't sit on the world map screen for like 3 minutes without doing anything, you will never hear that. and I don't know why it's that far into the song, but it's there. And the whole, like, every single song in the whole game, like, the final boss music is up there with my favorites because, like, just, like, 6 minutes into one song loop, there's just, like, I don't even know what language it is. I'm torn between Japanese and Russian because the game has like Russian-esque lettering around, so it could be a Russian dude. But there's some like throat singing sounding guy who's like rapping at like a million miles an hour underneath the beat of the song. It's like it goes so hard. I
We
have
have the
no idea.
Mongolian Eminem.
Yes, I have the Mongolian Eminem going crazy underneath the final boss music. Um, and the reason that like, I have such an emphasis on the music for this game is because, I mean, going back to what we said in the OVA episode last week, uh, Nobuo Uematsu and Sakaguchi left together for a reason. I think that's because they both work together. I want to say almost better than almost like any other like director composer duo that I have played a game or seen a thing from. Like they're on Christopher Nolan, Hans Zimmer levels of just like when they are working on the same thing, it's magnificent. And the game more than any that I've played so far has like I said before with the world map kind of evoking those feelings of you've explored this world of eternity or for eternity. That's because your character has lived for 1,000 years. They say 1,000 years. It's probably been longer because there's probably some like the Japanese word for millennia probably got a little bit lost in translation or something. Just because some things they say in the story kind of make it seem like it's been longer. But like that feeling of your some of your characters have been around for so long that just like people say that they have a problem and they have this weird like conflicting reaction of, oh, that wouldn't matter to me because I'm immortal, and
Yeah. Why
oh my
concern
god,
yourselves with the lives of mortals?
but at the same time, oh my god, I've seen so many people with the same problem that now I am terrified and sad for you, and I'm going to try to help you so that you don't get added to the pile of corpses that have been left in my wake of not being able to help people.
Oh.
And that's like main story stuff. And I mentioned this too the last time that I talked about it. In most games you get rewarded with like, oh, you did the cool thing, you get your fire immunity ring or whatever that makes you absorb fire damage as health. Not only do you get the fire immunity ring in Lost Odyssey, you are treated to a wonderful uh digital like novella for
Of
a lot. Like
course.
you'll just be like walking up to a guy in the street and being like, oh, well, I've been talking to NPCs, am I gonna, and I don't even have to press a button. I walk up to the man with like a fishing hook in his hand, and he goes, ah, man, the tide's been weird today. I haven't been getting a lot of fish. And then the main character Kyle will just be like, that reminds me of, and the screen will go like and it'll just be like new memory unlocked. And it's like I think a separate guy worked on the memory text from the rest of the game. I'm pretty sure there's like a separate credit for that. He went to like Harvard or something. I
Oh
did a little
wow.
bit of looking into him, and it's like you can't even tell that it was written in another language because it just feels like it was written for English and by a master wordsmith like 200 years ago or something. Like these are like total tearjerkers paired with music that is unique to the memory reading segments
That you
and
find on
by
a random fisherman.
that you find on a random fisherman. And there's like a tracker that keeps track of all like 30 or 40 of them or whatever. And when you think about, oh man, you're gonna reward me for playing a video game with reading. What are you, my mom? It's like, that's stupid. I don't care about that. By the end of the game, I was like kicking myself for missing some that I
Please
could
let
have
me
go back
read
and
more.
get. Exactly, because I was like, some of these are like so emotionally evocative that I need to make sure that I read all of them so I could just
Yeah.
get the whole picture. And none of them are like, oh, this tells me like lore about this old nation. A lot of times they happen so far back in the Immortals' memories that they can't even remember the names of all the people or where they took place. And it'll
Oh
just be
wow.
like, oh man, by the time this event happens, I've read about Kime's like his that one time where he was guarding a prison full of young people that were deemed to be losers by upper society, and when a fire broke out in the city, the upper class people just said to let the prison burn so that all the people could die inside because they were lesser. And him like dealing with that is not directly related to anything that happens in the game, but you get that, oh, he went through that in the past. That's probably why he feels this way right now. That's why he's such like a gruff just jerk sometimes, because my man's seen some stuff that he doesn't like very much. And that's why he behaves like this. And then at one point, just because the whole game, I think honestly Sakaguchi needed to go to like a therapist or something, because he was really taking the piss out of me when I was playing it. There's just like a 30-minute like funeral mini game with
mini
just no
game.
This is like disc 1 because this is 4 discs on an Xbox 360 game, by the way. So this is a real throwback. There's just a funeral mini game where just 2 characters, the mom is sick and then she dies and everyone's sad. Everyone is crying, and instead of being like, "Oh, don't you the player feel so bad. All right, on to the next thing." It's like, "No. Go around the ruins, pick the sacred flowers, get enough sticks to make torches, get enough things to make all these specific little cultural elements that someone had to think about to make them feel real, and then you do the whole ceremony yourself when you're done collecting all the things and listening to all the things that people have to say about this person that you've never met before and how it's so sad that they're gone and how you should live your life better and stuff." It's just like, what happened? In Final Fantasy 15, I try to make friends, but then if I go to the thing that makes my game easier to play, then I go to the hotel and I don't get to talk to my friends because that gives me the higher health regen. But if I want to go talk to my friends, I gotta go to the woods and eat ramen. That doesn't give me as good health. Where did we go wrong? When Lost Odyssey on the Xbox 360 has the better way to do things with character interaction.
It's
I don't
such
know,
a
man.
common like problem in modern RPGs in general, just of like, oh, we're gonna sequester our little upgrades into these obfuscated systems that don't engage with the rest of the game. Just give it to me if I talk to the right person.
Yes, and it was very clear to me that divide did not exist in Lost Odyssey at all, because they had thought about it so like well and completely from the beginning. It feels like that was just both character interaction and story and gameplay were just like mushed together pretty much perfectly. And I gotta say, it is a crying shame that this will never be put on anything else other than Xbox 360 and One. Because man,
this has been on my list to play for so long. I just have no way to play it. It's just not.
It's
not possible. I hope I'll get around to it at some point.
It's because it's one of those things where I played it and I finished it and I was like, man, that was really really good. And then a couple days, weeks went by after just like thinking about it and listening to the soundtrack again, and I was like, God, that's like top 5. That is like top 5
it's
RPGs
peak.
that
Wow.
I've played. It's it is peak fiction. And God damn it, Mistwalker, I hate you for only making things for one weird like device and then never like putting it on other things. That's Atlas's job. Leave Atlas to Atlas. You need to put
Even
your
Atlas
game...
isn't Atlasing anymore. Persona's on
exactly.
PC.
Well, I will never get to play Fantasian because it's just going to be on mobile and Apple things forever, unless I emulate it with some weird multi-stage Apple
That
Store
probably
emulator
won't work.
thing. It'll probably ruin the whole experience for me in some way, shape, or form.
I'm gonna find a way to bring Infinity Blade back. God damn.
Someday. It's got to happen. I don't know. Who knows? In like 10 years, when 360 emulation comes as easy as like PS2 emulation or something, then maybe more people will get to play it. But man, it's why I gotta encourage more people to go for those hidden gems, those weird old games that you might just be like, I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but I came across the soundtrack that one time and it was real good. So I played the whole thing, and now I'm a big fan of. I'm in the cool person club of me and 6 other people have played this game, and no one else has heard of it before.
Just can't play it.
Yeah.
I do think,
It's a damn shame.
Brett, have you heard of Blue Dragon?
I have heard of Blue Dragon.
So Blue Dragon's another Mistwalker
Dragon.
game.
Yes.
This is one of the JRPGs that I grew up with, was Blue Dragon, which is this funky little game. I thought it was an anime spinoff for a very long time. I don't know why. It just looks like it.
It's because they have what's his name from Dragon Ball doing all the art.
Toriyama.
Yes.
Blue Dragon is basically a JoJo game. Characters have these they got little shadow things that are giant blue dragon monsters that look very...
Wait, this sounds familiar.
Yes, I would... Anyone where this is like bringing up memories, look this game up, because it is one of the most like unique games I've played that I completely forgot about. Like, I have a feeling this has happened to a lot of people for some reason, where Blue Dragon is one of those JRPGs that slipped by. I think that this has a habit of happening with Toriyama. Because his art style is so polarizing to a lot of people, especially in like Western.
There is a manga for this, I think, at least.
Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
No, I don't know if this has been implanted by someone or something, but I have a memory of watching a show
do I, Alex.
about this.
So do I, and I don't know if it's real or not.
Sure, that's not Tyrell's niece.
Oh no!
I would say it is, but I can't find it. There's nothing here to indicate that it's real.
And it has to be. I haven't interacted with this video game. It has to be a manga or an anime. Oh my god!
With Toriyama especially, it could be Dragon Ball, could be Dragon Quest, could be Blue Dragon, could be Chrono Trigger. It could be 45 billion. Together. He has like same face syndrome, the worst I've ever seen it in a man's art style before.
Oh, Ryan, it's a TV series.
Oh my!
I have to know this
TV
series was
51 episodes.
Was it before what year?
April 2008 to March 2009.
So it was after the game.
Oh, wait a second, hang on.
Based on the game?
The first season ran for 51 episodes, 2007 to 2008. Second season ran for 51 episodes from 2008 to 2000.
Oh my god!
2 seasons long.
How did the game do that well?
Oh my god!
If it was airing in 2007, again. So this game released in Japan in 2006 and everywhere else in 2007. It's another one of those Mistwalker Xbox 360 restricted games that I just remember being like a fever dream of a game. Like I don't remember the story of this at all. I just remember playing it and liking it, but it having like, I remember there being an airship that you were on with a giant dragon behind you. I don't remember where that was, but it was. I just have this one persistent memory of this game that does not go away. So occasionally I'll just like sit to myself and think, I'll just remember Blue Dragon.
This was something to remember. Thank you so much for bringing this up.
Yeah, it was super cool, but I don't remember if this game was good or not. I just remember it being.
It's like
I remember this being like the quintessential kids JRPG that was just very strange. I mean, Famitsu gave it a 37 out of 40, so it's probably terrible. Good old Famitsu. Yeah. Man, okay, looking at the scores now, this is one of those weird games where Eurogamer give it a 5, Game Informer give it a 9. So,
yep, it's just one of those.
Everywhere on the list. Yeah.
I knew it had to be real.
It's just one of those games. This is like the JRPG I think of when I think of weird PS2 JRPGs, despite it being an Xbox 360 game.
Yeah, it has the same feel.
The same feel, and it looks like a PS2 game, to be honest. So I'm not that put off by saying that. But yeah, I just remember this being like a super weird little game that was extremely strange. And I just wanted to make sure everyone remembered it because, man, I would love to see ports of these games to PC.
Dude, if only, man.
I would love to see these.
Yeah, maybe someday Mistwalker will make something that gets like crazy mainstream all of a sudden, and then they'll have enough money to port a bunch of their older games. Because man, What a weird studio. If only some of their games were easier to play, so we could just do an episode on Mistwalker stuff or something.
I would love to. It's just, finding them is so hard.
Yeah.
I think most of their stuff is backwards compatible now, so if you can get your hands on an Xbox, I think they are playable, but...
Yeah, just not on, like, PC, anything.
Yeah. All right. That's our Blue Dragon tangent, Tunwin.
Wow.
I had to bring back. Alex, did you have anything on your list you wanted to bring up today?
I have a couple of things, actually, that you guys
Go
jogged
for
my
it.
memory from. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about all of them, but I have a card game that isn't Inscription, because I haven't played that yet and can't say anything about it. Quappy. Oh no, not Quappy, QWERTY. Was it? Oh no, yeah, it was
Quap?
Quappy. Yeah,
Quap?
yeah, Quap. Or Overgrowth, the game that I'm sure you've seen me been playing on Steam forever.
Oh, take your pick, Alex. We might have time for all of these.
I'll start with Overgrowth. It's a bit of a shorter one. And this is, I think it's just there's not really an incentive to play the game besides it feeling good. There's no the only reward is the physical interaction and the ragdoll.
Yeah.
You
There's
get
nothing wrong
from
with that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Overgrowth got an update this just about 2 weeks ago. It's now an open source project that you can take a look at the source code of. It's just super interesting.
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of mods recently. Hopefully this will up that. But I don't know how active the community for that is.
Surprisingly more than you would think, I think.
But yeah, it's just a good feeling game where you play as an anthropomorphized rabbit that can kick the shit out of a wolf.
Which is funny enough, this is a like spiritual successor to the developer for this is Wolfire Games, who has made a few other impressive things. I think most notably is probably Receiver and Receiver 2, which are like the roguelikes where you have like very physically modeled pistol that you have to like learn how to operate manually.
Oh yeah, full
change
cocking
everything.
Thing using a hammer if that's the part. Locking or unlocking, taking out, putting back in, locking the magazine in.
But they made back in 2005 a game called Lugaru, which was like the same idea as Overgrowth, but way earlier in terms of tech. And Overgrowth, I remember coming out and being like, it was essentially pitched as a revised version of that game, and I think the story might even be relatively the same.
So you have the Overgrowth. There's a couple of different stories in Overgrowth, the game. You have Overgrowth.
Yeah.
Then you have Drika's story where you play as a cat and you don't have all the fun jumping mechanics, unfortunately.
What a shame.
But I think it's also, and I think Drika's story is the third story. You have Overgrowth, then you have Lugaru, where I don't know because I haven't seen the original.
That's probably the adaptation of the original.
Where it's either an adaptation or like a spiritual remake or remaster, something like that, with this interesting branching story where and they show you like a path you can take in the menu, and she's like, oh, there's that many branching paths, and usually it's just like a choice between an A and a B path that are labeled A and B teleporters at the end of the level. But there's other interesting little things that you can do to affect the story besides that. It's fun to find those things, and just physics-based games are insanely entertaining to me.
They are fun, yeah.
Just for the sake of seeing how that knife flies through the air, I'll throw it.
Overgrowth is definitely worth playing for a little bit if you get your hands on it. It's been a long time since I've played it, but man, I remember having a lot of fun when this game was in early access and going through the process. So I should re-download it and go give it a shot again, because I think I'd have a good time with it.
They have in development a PvP like Street Fighter style mode.
Of course,
which is pretty interesting. Which I think it's local multiplayer though. It's not even split
Yeah,
screen
I can see
type.
that's a persistent issue with fighting games. Is often
Yeah.
the latency of online stuff gets real bad. All right.
So that's Overgrowth. QWOP is
I
in
mean,
a
it's a
much
classic,
similar vein. Yeah,
true
it's in
classic
a
video game.
much similar vein of, oh, look at how silly I can go. And trying to get the furthest by finding the and finding the optimal, I guess, walk cycle that isn't
The
even
optimal QWOP
remotely
cycle.
close to how. 'Cause
Mhm.
walk cycle. Where it's I'm friends with a lot of people who don't really optimize the fun out of video games, but more the optimization is the fun aspect to it,
Yeah.
and then they get bored with the game and then they go find the next thing to optimize. But it's I don't I feel like, I guess, QWOP isn't really something you can optimize from my point of view because it's just flailing everywhere. With
There
I
is a
guess
way.
the
I
exception
remember back in high school, like freshman year of high school, last year of middle school,
QWOP tactic.
QWOP had come out, and everyone was playing this game in computer lab. And so what would happen is someone figured out the exact like key combination to run like a real person. I don't remember what it is. I don't remember how to do it. But I remember you could like actually get a proper run going, and then we would have
Did
competitions on how
did
to
running like a
achieve
real
that.
person work?
Yes, it works in the game. You just
I
and it
just did
doesn't
the
even
lunge
look
shuffle.
goofy. It's just like super hard to do.
Oh my god.
It's incredibly difficult because you have to like rapidly hit
Yeah.
keys in the right way, or else it doesn't work at all. So,
I've been blind to the possibilities.
yep, it's a true
Um,
shame that you've been blinded.
my childhood wasted.
Yep.
And third game is Gwent. Because I
Nice.
haven't I I'm not too versed in card games, but the ones that I have played, I have not seen any type of card game style similar to Gwent. Uh,
It is
with
pretty
the
unique.
with because it's like it's either okay, it's like here's your field, quote unquote, where it's not really a controlled row, or in Hearthstone where it's just the magic style type thing where you can spend this much mana for cards and that stuff, or in Yu-Gi-Oh where you have one line and then you either have like attack or defense position or trap cards and things like that. This one has the three different rows or distances you can have your cards on, and I really like that different road system for how things affect it, and then those rows get totaled up for your
Have you been
what
playing
you're
Gwent
using
as
for.
the standalone game or part of The Witcher
I
3?
I haven't both actually. I found it was I was having a really rough time with Gwent in the Witcher 3 game. I had to save scum for
Because in Witcher 3,
hours.
it's much more. It isn't really a tactical game in a way. It's more about like collecting the right cards to
Yeah.
use.
Yeah. It's I had the same sort of thing happen with me with Gwent that I did with Wasteland 3, where something
Mm,
just didn't want me to. I would set Gwent to the easiest thing, and I couldn't beat the tutorial guy for like
yeah.
2 hours after trying.
Because the
And it
difficulty setting really doesn't make that much of a difference. It's just about it's because Gwent
also
is
I
basically like an advanced version of War.
yeah, and
So
Pretty
I
much,
went
yeah.
through the trouble of doing the Skellige deck quest in Blood and Wine.
oh
Don't
yeah,
do it. It's not worth it. It's the worst faction in the card game. My God, it's
you know
awful.
I'm gonna have to
It
do
has
it
a
now,
fun gimmick,
Alex.
but it's bad. Hmm?
I'm gonna have to do it now. I'm gonna take that as a personal challenge.
Oh
Go
god.
ahead. You won't have fun. Um, but yeah, I've been meaning to get Thronebreaker, which is the more gamified like story
Yeah.
around Gwent as a
Thronebreaker
war
is
game.
my favorite interpretation of Gwent by like a
Oh.
big degree. I really like Thronebreaker. It's just a
Great
super
thing.
interesting idea to like replace battles with this weird card game system especially because Thronebreakers is like very unique. It plays into like supply lines, and you have resources to use from outside.
Yeah.
It gives it the depth that the card game is missing itself. So it kind of plays into like, what are you coming into battle with?
I think that's the kind of depth that I was missing with, because in Witcher it's more the collectathon aspect. In the standalone Gwent game, it's much more. There's some more interesting, weird tactical mechanics to it. There's like much more fleshed out abilities that you have to dive deep into see how they can actually be effective. I think that was a little bit too much for me in the
Thronebreaker's a good
standalone
middle
game. So I
ground.
think, yeah, yeah, I
It also
like
looks
Three
very
Lanes.
good. I do very
Oh,
much
it's
like
beautiful.
Thronebreaker's look. It's almost like a comic book kind of aesthetic translated into a card game, which I think just works super well. All right. Any other
Those were my three.
Gwent things to talk about? Great. Yeah, we got through the list surprisingly. I think we nailed it. I got through the whole thing. So the only other little shout out I want to give, in fact, this can go into shout outs because this is my shout out for today. Y'all heard about Eve Online?
Eve
Boy,
Online.
have I.
Boy,
I've
howdy.
heard about it in passing, and the thing you're going to talk about, which I'm not going to say because I don't want.
Oh, I've attempted to play Eve. It's more fun to read than it is to play. Eve Online could not help itself, and today they announced a collaboration with Microsoft Excel, and I just think, man, this is one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because you can watch the video of this getting announced, and like the audience is clapping and super excited about it because of like what the Eve player base is. I just think this is amazing. Yeah, I am very happy this is real.
Where's the Microsoft Office iteration with the rest of video game history? Come on, if you get on Game Pass, you should have Office integration with whatever your game is. I should be able to immediately put all my stats into a Word document.
Hey, you can play Dwarf
Fortress.
You can, if you work a cubicle job, you can play Dwarf Fortress at work, and your boss will go by and think, "Oh God, what's wrong with that guy's spreadsheet?"
Oh yeah,
it's true. My shout out, just because I just got done playing it, I'm probably gonna end up playing some more later. I've taken the Persona pill, playing Persona 3, Fez, FES, however everybody says it different. Fish.
Persona 3 feet.
Yes, Persona 3 feet, specifically the feet version.
Yep.
On PS2. This is as close to playing Persona 5 as I'll probably ever get in my life. It's pretty good so far. I'm enjoying it. I'm very stressed. I tend to take these social interaction in a video game things very seriously, even though they're just ones and zeros and not real people. So I can't wait.
How could
but
you
you'll
say
hurt
that
their
about
feelings.
Personas.
Exactly. It's what do you mean I got to pick between getting into a sport and hanging out with Kenjis? I don't want to choose in real life.
Brett, you got to know these things. It will make a difference.
Oh, I know. Oh, it will. Don't worry. The amount of times they tell you that, make sure you spend your time wisely because your actions have consequences. And the first hour is foreboding, to say the least.
Yep.
Can't wait to see if I spelled my name wrong. What character dies?
I just love.
My character's name is Guagua Guanson. Don't worry.
Of course. Yeah. In Persona 5, you get warned about the same thing very early on, and I think a lot of people panicked about it. You have to literally not talk to anyone the entire game for it to become a problem, a real problem. Aside from the fact that you're missing out on 90% of the game if you do that, but
yeah,
it's really funny.
Actually, it ends a lot faster.
Oh yeah, it does. Right. Anything else to add, Brett? Or are we moving on?
I'll probably talk about it more when I'm done because I'm into
Alex, it's your time to shout out.
My shout out is I don't want to say it's my favorite hospital food because I wasn't in the hospital recently, but it just reminded me of that, and for some reason gave me good memory flashbacks.
Of course.
Having Jello and whipped cream for dessert. It's fun.
Nice. I love that you led that with hospital food.
Just some nice Jello with a dollop of Cool Whip on it.
Really set expectations, I think, in a different territory.
What's the deal with hospital food?
What is the deal with hospital food? All right, well, as always, we will see you next week, Tuesday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time on the podcast platform of your choice. All that good, jolly stuff. Whoa.
Hey! Sound of me falling off a cliff at the end of the episode.
Yep.
Back into my chamber.
That's what happens.
A chair. It's perfectly sized for my little body.